Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Grandstand Sports Data. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down every projected starting quarterback for the 2025 NFL season. And these rankings aren't just based on opinions or hot takes, they're going to come directly from a statistical projection built on historical trends. So each of the 32 starters will be given a letter grade using the same algorithm that we've featured in our past quarterback evaluation videos. So from those struggling gunslingers to the league's very best, we're going to be covering all 32 in today's video. So let's start with number one, or the guy who is ranked last for us, and it's going to be no other than Spencer Rattler. And Spencer Rattler, the projection has him dead last in just about every category. So you're talking about completion rate, accuracy, efficiency, you name it. And honestly, I don't disagree. The trend lines reflect what we've seen on tape. Inconsistent mechanics, shaky decision making, and a tendency to panic under pressure. So the tools are there, but the fundamentals and maturity haven't necessarily caught up yet. And could he outperform the projection if he cleans up his footwork and gets into the right system? Maybe, but right now the numbers feel realistic and he's more of a developmental backup than a starter, is how I would look at it. And maybe even Tyler Shaw taking over by the end of the season. All right, so as you can see, we jumped from F all the way up to C minus. So this is basically telling you that the model thinks that there's going to be some pretty decent quarterback play this season. And let's start with number 31. It's going to be Michael Penix. Michael Penix, the model basically projects Penix to be near the bottom. And I think that's harsh, but a little bit understandable. So the low completion rate that you see and then also the high bad throw percentage reflect his gunslinger mentality, right? He'll test those tight windows. Now, the upside is that it's obvious tremendous arm talent from Penix. The ball basically jumps out of his hand, and he's far more comfortable pushing it downfield than dinking it underneath. But the fundamentals matter. Mechanics kind of get sloppy late in games, and he hasn't shown the ability to win consistently when defenses disguise their coverage. Now, C minus is fair for now, but his ceiling is higher than these projections suggest. If coaching can clean him up, he looks like he'll be a pretty good starter in this league. Now moving on to number 30 and a little bit down here compared to last year, it's going to be Sam Darnold. And the projection might have Darnold sitting at a C minus, but I think that's selling him a little bit short. Sure, the concerns are real. He still forces throws under pressure and his footwork breaks down, but he showed in Minnesota he can be efficient in the right structure. So leaving that system could hurt, but Seattle is bringing in Clint Kubiak, who gives him a real shot to staying on schedule and play within himself. So if he can settle into that scheme, I see him performing closer to average, that average starter territory more than the projection suggests, where it has him as a below average starter. All right, so let's move on to number 29. And number 29 is going to be Russell Wilson. And Wilson, his projection as an average quarterback almost feels generous based on recent tape. The sack rate and the middling accuracy, that lines up with what we've seen. A quarterback who just, trying to extend plays the way that or can extend plays the way that he used to. Now, to be fair, he's working behind one of the worst offensive lines in football, and that makes life hard for any quarterback. Now, the deep ball is still there, but the off script magic that defined his prime is starting to fade away a little bit. Average feels good for now, but without adapting his style, he's trending closer to the below average quarterbacks, and that's where I would have him. Now, go rolling on to number 28 is going to be Geno Smith. Now, Geno's projection is a little bit interesting to me. He has that high completion rate, on target numbers look sharp, yet the model calls him average. And that tells me it doesn't fully trust him sustaining the level that we saw 2 years ago. On tape, he's accurate and decisive, but there are too many stretches of inconsistency. The projection is probably fair. He's no longer the out of nowhere Pro Bowler, but he's still a reliable veteran starter, is what I would call him. Now, let's move on to number 27. And this is going to be Caleb Williams. Williams projects as an average, but I'd call that the floor here, not the ceiling. The model doesn't capture his playmaking outside the pocket or how dangerous he is at improvising. Now, being in Ben Johnson's system could elevate him to the kind of steady production that we've seen from Jared Goff over the years. But here's the catch: his intangibles and his personality are still big question marks, right? And if those don't align, he could just as easily flame out of the league in a couple of years. So he's by far, I would call him the most volatile quarterback that we're looking at throughout, these starting 32 guys. Now, let's move on to number 26. It's going to be Justin Fields. And Fields projects right in the middle, average, and that feels about right. The efficiency numbers are fine, but the sack rate over 10% really stands out to us. A big reason for that is his tendency to tuck and run instead of getting the ball out, which is something we'll see consistently with mobile quarterbacks as we go through this video. So the arm talent and athleticism are undeniable, but until he processes defenses quicker and gets the fundamentals of timing down, this C grade is probably his ceiling. Okay, so let's go to number 25 now, and it's going to be Drake May, and they are in the C plus category here of fair quarterbacks. May projects just above who we're going to touch on next, and that's Bryce Young, but at a C plus. But I'm honestly down on him here. The physical traits are incredible, right? One of the best raw profiles that we've seen since Josh Allen, but the red flags are real. On tape, he looks like he tightens up in some of the bigger spots, and some of the decision making makes you question his football IQ. The projection sees him as an average starter, and while the tools give him a chance to break through, there's just as much risk he never puts it together. So, boom or bust, I'm leaning more toward the latter right now on Drake May, and I'm just not impressed by him. Going on to 24, like we mentioned, it's going to be Bryce Young, and the projection drops Bryce at a C plus, but I think that's a little too low. I think he's more in that B category. And so I want to point out from the time that he got his job back last year to the end of the season, I was really impressed with how he played. It didn't show up in the win-loss column, but the tape showed better rhythm, accuracy, and decision making. Yes, the size and arm limitations are still there, and pressure will always test him. But in a weak division, I see him as someone who can outperform these numbers. To me, this projection is way too down on Bryce Young this year. Let's continue with some of those fair quarterbacks. Like we said, we had a lot of guys that were finishing in the average to above average category here for this analysis. And we're going to go to number 23, which is CJ Stroud. And the model puts Stroud at a C plus, but I'm not buying the idea he's going to outperform that. Let's not forget, in 2023, the same algorithm had him ranked 13th, and in 2024, he plummeted all the way down to 29. Now, you're telling me with one of the worst offensive lines in football in front of him, he's somehow going to rebound and be better? I don't think so, buddy. The talent's there, no question about it, but the situation looks like it's setting him up to struggle and not necessarily thrive. Let's go on to number 22. It's going to be J.J. McCarthy. And McCarthy's projection at a C plus is fair, but I think the context matters here. He's not a rookie in the traditional sense. He missed last year with the injury, so this is really his first chance to start fresh. What I like is the system he's stepping into, the weapons around him, and the intangibles, right? His poise, his leadership, and the ability to operate and structure are real strengths of his. The question is whether he can push the ball and elevate when plays break down. But with this supporting cast, he's got a chance to beat these projections, in just my opinion. Going on to number 21, and I think this is criminally low for this guy. It's Baker Mayfield. The projection puts Baker at a C plus, and that feels way too low. Just like I mentioned, his efficiency metrics, completion rate, and touchdown percentage are among the better mid-tier quarterbacks, and the tape backs it up. He's really rediscovered his rhythm and his mechanics. He plays with confidence now, and when his projection holds, he can pick defenses apart. So he'll never be elite, but right now he looks more solid starter than a fringe guy. So me, in my opinion, I'd bump him closer to that B minus, maybe even a B, rather than have him in this C plus category. Now, speaking of some of those B minuses, let's move on to the satisfactory quarterbacks. And we're going to start with the first one at number 20. It's going to be Joe Flacco, and he's getting a B minus projection, and I think it's a bit of a surprise here. So the touchdown rate is high, but the rest of the numbers scream journeyman starter to me. And on film, you know what you're getting. You know, he's poised, he can still throw the deep ball, but mobility and consistency are very limited. This projection is probably giving him too much credit for the efficiency in small spurts, and I'd slot him maybe closer to the C than the B minus at this stage in his career. Let's move on to the next guy, and I think here's another guy that's a little bit too high, and it's Daniel Jones for the Indianapolis Colts. Jones gets a B minus projection as well, which is interesting because the efficiency numbers are just way too low. Yet the QBR suggests he does more with less. On film, he's tough and he can make plays with his legs, but he also takes far too many sacks and misses quick reads. So the upside is always going to be there if you tailor the system to him. But as a passer, this grade feels way too high. I'd lean more honestly towards the D pluses, maybe even D's, until he proves he can elevate in an offense without everything being perfect for him. Now, let's go on to the next guy. It's going to be number 18, Kyler Murray. Murray's projection is at a B minus, and this feels fair to me, but it comes with the same old story, right? Once again, he's behind a poor offensive line, which means more tucking and running. And when you're undersized like Kyler, that only increases the probability of injury. So stop me if you heard this one before. The accuracy numbers are solid, and when he plays on rhythm, he's dangerous, but too often he's forced off script. And the talent is there, but until the situation changes, inconsistency and health will always hold him back. I would have him lower than the B minus. And let's cap it off for the B minus guys at number 17, and that is Trevor Lawrence. The projection has Lawrence at a B minus, and honestly, I'm way down on Trevor. In 4 years, we've seen flashes of the talent, good footwork, mechanics, processing, but the inconsistency is constant, especially against pressure. And on top of that, has one of the worst projected off lines in the league. Now, this is what I will say getting into this. This is what throws me off is that there is a double standard, right? In 17 games, I can call Jaden Daniels great and nobody will blink an eye. But if I say that Trevor Lawrence looks like a bust after 4 years, suddenly I'm too strong or it's too much of a hot take and I have to wait and see. All right, I need to know which one is it. Until he proves he can string this all together, I think he should be a bit lower than this on the list. And I don't know why it takes 4 years to say a guy sucks and only 17 games to say that a guy is real. Somebody's got to answer these questions for me. Now let's move on to the B quarterbacks, and we're going to start with the guy I think is really high on this list, especially for a rookie. It's Cam Ward at 16. And Ward is landing at a B, and it's kind of interesting to me. So the projection shows decent efficiency with some turnover risk, and that tracks with what he is talented, but really raw. And on tape, you see a quick release and confidence attacking defenses, but his mechanics and decision making still need refinement. So a B projection is way too generous early on, but long term, the upside is there. And if he cleans it up the fundamentals, he should be good. But I think that this is his absolute ceiling. I would have him way lower than this, especially for a rookie quarterback. Now, let's move on to number 15. It's going to be Dak Prescott. And Dak's projection is at a B, and I think it makes sense, right? He's efficient, he's accurate, and he keeps the offense on schedule. But the turnovers in big spots and a tendency to shrink against top defenses hold him back. On film, he does everything well, but doesn't elevate to the level of elite. The model is right. He's solid. He's a reliable starter, but not quite in the tier of guys who can carry a team by themselves. So number 15 feels about right, maybe even a tad bit low with the production that he has had. Moving on to number 14 is going to be Justin Herbert. And Herbert slots in as a solid B, and that matches the eye test, right? The efficiency numbers are strong across the board, low interception rate, good completion percentage, and his fundamentals are clean. The knock, though, is that what the projection hints at is wins. He's got elite tools, but too often the production doesn't translate to game changing results. So I'd argue he's closer to a B plus quarterback, but until the consistency in crunch time shows up, B feels fair right now. All right, so let's start with the B plus quarterbacks. And coming in at number 13 is going to be Jaden Daniels. And Daniels is projected at a B plus, and I think it's aggressive. While the upside is real, I think we've got to be ready for him to come back to earth a bit this season. Now, I'm not saying a major drop off, but year two in the NFL has a way of humbling quarterbacks. The completion rate, in the efficiency numbers. They're all great, and his dual threat ability is special, but durability and whether his mechanics hold up under pressure are still a concern. B plus is fair, but don't be surprised if reality checks in before the next leap forward. So I would say a tad bit of a down year if you're comparing him to himself in last year. Moving on to number 12 is going to be another surprise here, Bo Nix. And Nix at a B plus is intriguing to me. The numbers project steadiness, strong completion rate, low sack percentage, which reflect his style, right? Efficient, on schedule, and very risk averse. Now, on tape, you see a rhythm passer who thrives in structure. The question is whether he can create when things break down. So the B plus feels like the optimistic end of his projection, but I can't knock it. I think he's in a good system for his style of play. This moves us on to number 11, and it's Aaron Rodgers. And the model gives Aaron Rodgers a B plus. But I'll be honest, I think he's washed. Multiple leg injuries this late in his career are tough to overcome, and he's not extending plays the way that he once did. That said, he's in a program that consistently wins football games, and that does matter. So this could go either way. His smarts and precision could steady the ship, or the body just won't cooperate. In an Arthur Smith offense, I'm not sure he hits his ceiling, but B plus feels, a little bit too optimistic for me. Now, moving on to some of the other B plus quarterbacks. We're going to move on to number 10, and that's Matthew Stafford. Stafford, he's projected as that B plus, and that's about perfect to us. The efficiency metrics sit in the middle, but the fundamentals like arm strength, toughness, pocket command, they still show up every week. And he's not as consistent as his Super Bowl run, and injuries have taken some edge off, but he remains one of the league's best pure throwers. And then you mix in the wide receiving core, not too bad at all, right? So B plus is the right label. It's steady, it's productive, and he's still capable of those big game performances. Moving on to the next guy, it's gonna be number 9, Brock Purdy. And Purdy projects at B plus, and I think that's a fair reflection of his game. The efficiency numbers are excellent, completion, yards per attempt, all top tier, and on film he's decisive, accurate within Shanahan's system. The real question has always been whether he's elevating the talent or the talent is elevating him. And this year is going to be the real test because it's the least talent he's had around him since taking over. So we'll find out if he can carry more of the load, off of himself or onto himself. But B plus feels about right to us, but this season will define how real he actually is. That leads up to number 8, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And I know people are going to lose their mind when they see him at number 8. But I have to be real with you guys. The model has Mahomes at a B plus, and I get where it's coming from. He finished 2023 ranked ninth, and then 2024 ranked 10th. So statistically, he's been a drop off since losing Tyreek Hill. And the completion percentage and touchdown rate look good, not elite. But here's the thing, it's the intangibles. It still separates him. No one creates more out of structure. No one elevates teammates like he does. No one is more dangerous when it matters the most. The numbers say B plus. The reality is the guy is obviously an A plus quarterback. Now, moving on to the A minuses, we call them the superior talent. At number 7, it's going to be Jalen Hurts. And Hurts also comes in at that A minus, but in a different way. The numbers point to a top tier quarterback rating and low interception rate, right? And yet the sack percentage is going to be always high with Jalen Hurts. On film, you can see the same thing. He's dangerous with his legs and poised in the red zone, but he'll hold on to the ball too long at times. Fundamentally, his leadership and toughness elevate him beyond the stat line. So the A minus is fair, but unlike our next guy, Hertz has the intangibles to creep into that A tier if he sharpens the consistency. And that next guy we're talking about at number 6 is Tua Tagovailoa. Now, the model puts Tua at an A minus, and while the numbers look great, he's one of the widest variance quarterbacks to project. When he plays, and that's the key thing, the efficiency is elite. Best completion percentage, strong touchdown rate, but that's the key. When he plays, durability has always been the concern, and outside of structure, he struggles. Add in the dynamic of Tyreek Hill, who's got a huge voice in the locker room this season and even hinted last year he didn't even want to be in Miami. So there's volatility here with Tua. A minus feels right, but the floor is much, much, much lower than the numbers suggest. And that you guys need to be aware of. All right, so let's jump to the league quarterbacks. We're talking about the A guys, and number 5 is going to be Joe Burrow. And Burrow, he lands in the elite tier, and the numbers show why. So he's got a high completion rate, a strong touchdown interception ratio, and he's efficient under pressure. On film, he wins with precision and poise. Mechanics are very, very clean. Decision making is sharp, and he commands the pocket like a surgeon. So he may not wow you with that raw athleticism, but he doesn't need to. What makes Burrow elite is how consistently he executes the fundamentals and elevates the offense around him. I would even go as high as putting him in maybe the top 3 if he could stay healthy this season. Now, moving on to number 4, it's going to be this guy called Josh Allen, and Josh Allen projects as an A, and that fits perfectly. The QBR projection is number 1, showing how much he impacts the game with both his arm and his legs. So the completion percentage isn't elite, but his touchdown production and ability to extend plays more than make up for it. On tape, he's still reckless at times. Forcing throws he doesn't really need to, but the raw playmaking ability is unmatched. Elite is the right word for him as he tilts the field in every snap. All right, so let's move on to the best of the best. And we're talking about the top 3 quarterbacks. Starting with number 3 is going to be Jared Goff. And Goff gets an A plus here, and that's a credit to how sharp he's been in Detroit's system. Great efficiency, strong command, and a top tier fundamentals. But I'll be honest, I'm nervous about him this year. Ben Johnson is gone, and the new offensive coordinator is John Morton. He's taking over this year. The last time he was an offensive coordinator was in 2017 with the Jets, and that offense ranked 24th in points scored that year. So Goff is a system elite, but if the system takes a step back, so could he. And I'm a little down on him, and frankly, the Lions as a whole this season, heading into the upcoming year, that's just my take on it. But with that, coming in at number 2 is Jordan Love. And Love landing at an A plus is way too high for me. I fade this projection very, very hard. Don't get me wrong, he's not going to suck. He showed growth last year, and the arm talent is clear, but calling him one of the best already? Not yet. The efficiency numbers and low sack rate are nice, but there are still stretches of inaccuracy and questionable decisions. And let's be honest, he doesn't have big name weapons around him either. So an A plus is highly overrating him. He should be lower until he can prove himself over time. And now coming in at number 1, and maybe not one that I disagree with, it's going to be Lamar Jackson. And Lamar comes in as an A plus, and the numbers back it up, right? League best touchdown rate, low turnovers, and a big win totals, right? What really stands out is how much better he's become as a passer the last few years. He's reading defenses, throwing into tighter windows, and adding polish to the fundamentals. So the problem with Lamar isn't excellence. He is excellent, but it just hasn't translated when the lights are the brightest in the playoffs. If you want to cross sports and have a comparison, he's very reminiscent of Jason Tatum. Unbelievable MVP level talent, but too often he goes quiet in that postseason. And that wraps up our breakdown of every projected starting quarterback for the 2025 NFL season. Remember, these grades are based on trend lines and historical data, but as always, the real story will unfold on the field. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to Grandstand Sports Data for more weekly NFL analysis, betting strategies, and data driven breakdowns all season long. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you think is graded too high, or who deserves to be bumped down, or even bumped up? We love hearing your takes. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.